How confident are you in choosing the right dose and right form of melatonin to optimize your health in your 40s and 50s? Our natural production of melatonin decreases with age and with declining sex hormones, and it affects way more than just your sleep. So, is it something you should be taking? And if so, how much should you take and how often should you take it? You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 254, Can Melatonin Help During Perimenopause? Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for forward-thinking women who know it's theoretically possible to get to the other side of menopause without developing the standard list of chronic diseases and limitations, but aren't totally clear about how exactly to tip the odds in their favor without a live-in staff of experts on retainer to optimize every aspect of her health. You can do it, and you don't have to be rich and famous to get there. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I'm so happy that you're here today, and I hope you're having a great day. How's your lube? Hopefully you've decided to be more critical of lube ingredients and now know why it's so important not to tolerate any poor quality ingredients. Today we're going to talk about melatonin. How do you feel about your knowledge about melatonin? Most people know it's a supplement you can take over the counter as an oral pill that sometimes helps if you're having trouble sleeping. But I think you'll feel better equipped to produce wellness during perimenopause and beyond if you understand more than the average person does about melatonin. We're not average here, so let's get started. Melatonin is a hormone produced by almost all living organisms, including plants, animals, bacteria, funguses, insects, and a yappy dog next door. Melatonin is approximately 3 billion years old. You probably know that it's important to your circadian rhythm and your sleep-wake cycle. But here's something irrelevant to today's discussion, but I thought it was super interesting. You know how some animals only have babies at certain times of year? I love going to baby animal days at farms. There are like 3 or 4 farms near where I live that all do baby animal days, and I love them. The baby goats are the best, although hanging out in their pen is complete chaos, and an adorable little one ate my shoelace once, like plastic aglet and all, swallowed it. And I brushed a sweet baby cow for a while, but it kept wiping its slimy nose on my sleeve, which was odd. It's also where I first made the decision that I must have a bunny in my life, and now I do. Anyway, baby animal days is in the spring, and animals that only reproduce at certain times of year are called photoperiodic animals. Some birds, fish, deer, insects, etc. are photoperiodic. And you know what controls whether they're capable of reproducing or not? Yes, melatonin. Well, melatonin's production in response to the availability of sunlight. But melatonin determines whether they produce the FSH and LH to be fertile. But melatonin does way more than just help you sleep and restrict fuzzy baby lambs' birthdays. In we humans, melatonin is mostly produced in the pineal gland, which is an endocrine gland located deep inside the structure of your brain, but it can be synthesized in small amounts in other body locations, including the GI tract, the mitochondria, ovaries, skin, retina, and bone marrow, to be used locally at those sites, like in the intestines or ovaries. There are melatonin receptors in the brain, pituitary gland, retina, aorta, coronary arteries, immune cells, liver, kidney, skin, intestines, and ovaries. Melatonin is found in blood, urine, cerebrospinal fluid, eyes, gut, bone marrow, breast milk, amniotic fluid, and more. Melatonin from your pineal gland is sent around the whole body in the bloodstream. If you care, the amino acid tryptophan that's famous in Turkey, but is in a bunch of other things too, gets converted to serotonin, and serotonin gets converted to N-acetyl-5-methoxytryptamine, which is the other name for melatonin, like Thomas Mapother, which was Tom Cruise's birth name. Why might your mitochondria and intestines and retinas want melatonin, you may ask? One big reason is because it's one of the best antioxidants in and free radical scavengers in the world. Even better than our master antioxidant, glutathione. Way better than vitamins E or C. It's also very anti-inflammatory. So anytime you're doing things that cause oxidative stress or inflammation, melatonin is a valuable asset. Things like making usable energy from glucose, or ovulating, or digesting food. Melatonin is also critical for proper immune system function. That's part of the reason sleeping well is so critical for not getting sick in the first place and for recovering faster if you do. Also, why sales of melatonin supplements went through the roof around COVID times. Remember COVID times? A lot of melatonin makers made a lot of money then. Correlation studies show that people with coronary artery disease tend to, on average, have lower melatonin levels than people without heart disease, and that strokes most often occur in the mornings when melatonin levels are at their lowest. Melatonin deficiency is also correlated with obesity, especially in peri- and postmenopausal women. Melatonin has also been shown to be able to protect ovarian follicles from radiation, promoting fertility in hostile environments. Something else melatonin can do is, if estrogen levels get too high, it can act as a bit of a gentle anti-estrogen to keep things from going haywire. No explanation of what types of estrogen. There are more nefarious metabolites of estrogen and more benign ones. But I came across this study in my research that showed that in a group of mice bred to always get breast cancer, melatonin supplementation didn't affect their breast cancer development rates. Neither did bioidentical estrogen and progesterone treatment. But estrogen and progesterone treatment plus melatonin treatment, combined all three, significantly repressed breast cancer formation. Remember, this was in mice. The researchers had a theory about melatonin binding being significantly decreased in older mammary glands, so supplementing with melatonin overcame this consequence of age and allowed the cancer-prone cells to resist developing tumors. Of course, we're not mice who have been genetically altered to develop breast cancer, but it's still kind of cool that melatonin could help reduce the risk of cancer. It's actually used kind of a lot for that, more for brain cancers. They didn't go into more detail about why the melatonin didn't do that on its own, only when combined with the hormones. But in their conclusion, the researchers said, as an antioxidant and mitochondrial membrane permeability transition pore inhibitor, melatonin may be a good candidate to help in the management of cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and viral infections. End quote. Melatonin has been studied in preventing the development and proliferation of lots of kinds of cancer because it's antioxidant and anti-inflammatory and also can penetrate the nucleus of the cell, which very few things can do, to protect DNA from oxidative damage. Pretty cool stuff, right? And I haven't even got to the best part as far as perimenopausal symptoms are concerned. Melatonin is a key regulator of our core body temperature. When our brain isn't getting enough estrogen to function properly, our hypothalamus in our brain gets chaotic signals that dysregulate our core body temperature, causing the notorious hot flash and or feeling too hot in general, especially at night. But another big influence on our core body temperature is melatonin. It's a hypothermic agent. Lowering your core body temperature doesn't make you produce more melatonin. So if you get in an ice bath, that doesn't make you produce melatonin. But having a higher body level of melatonin does decrease your core body temperature. That's how we know the melatonin is causing the core body temperature drop. It's causal, not just correlated. Normal amounts of melatonin secreted by normal melatonin producers at night lowers core body temperature 0.54 to 0.72 degrees Fahrenheit. And suppression of melatonin production at night, which you can easily do by the presence of light, increases core body temperature by that same amount. Something one of the journal articles I read said is that two things can prevent melatonin's hypothermic effects: aging and the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. Weird. So the older you get, the less melatonin suppresses your core body temperature at night. And when you're in the second half of your menstrual cycle, it also doesn't, which I find strange. The authors of the article hypothesized that a fertilized egg is more likely to successfully implant and start growing under warmer body conditions. So that's why melatonin takes a monthly break from its hypothermic effects. Weird. Studies of ingesting capsules of melatonin show that taking the capsules does decrease core body temperature, and lower dose capsules do so to a smaller extent than higher dose capsules. Prior to puberty, humans make about 1 milligram of melatonin per day. I think it's more like 0.9. After puberty, it drops to around 0.3 milligrams per day. then it can decrease further with advancing age. And of course, everyone is a little bit different, but 0.3 milligrams per day is an approximate normal average for a healthy adult. One small study showed that women in perimenopause produce about 50% less melatonin than they did in their 20s. I'm not sure how they measured that because I don't think they had data from 25 years before. So I think they were just comparing women in their mid to late 40s to women in their 20s or something. Another study showed a 41% decrease in nocturnal urinary melatonin excretion in women aged 40 to 44 compared to women in their 20s, and then another 35% decline between the ages of 50 and 59. They didn't study anyone between ages 45 and 49, which is kind of weird. So you might go from feeling great, producing 0.3 milligrams of melatonin a day in your 20s, to living with 0.18 milligrams a day in your 40s and 0.12 milligrams once you're 60. I think that's helpful to know. Here's something I didn't know before. High melatonin levels inhibit ovulation. That's probably why natural levels go down from 1 milligram a day to 0.3 milligrams a day at puberty. But too low melatonin levels cause more follicular cell death and also suppress successful implantation of an embryo. Also, high melatonin levels reduce estrogen levels, and low melatonin levels increase estrogen levels. But I'm not sure if that's healthy estrogen or more unhealthy forms of estrogen. I don't know that any of this is relevant to you other than to know that there's an interplay between estrogen levels and that the melatonin has to be in the Goldilocks zone for normal fertility. Something I used to worry about with melatonin, since it's an endocrine hormone, is that taking too much exogenous melatonin would suppress my natural production of melatonin. That happens with testosterone and steroid hormones and stuff, so I wasn't sure if there were studies about that. Turns out that there are. Not a ton of them, and they're pretty small, but it does seem like there is not a negative feedback loop with melatonin. So taking melatonin does not encourage your body to stop making its own melatonin. That's a relief. However, lots of anecdotal reports do show that people taking high doses of melatonin for prolonged periods of time start to lose its effectiveness over time. And taking more and more doesn't necessarily help. They have to just stop it for a while and then start again at a lower dose later to see if they can get the sleep benefits back. People have theories about saturating your receptor sites or altering your receptor functionality by having too much on board all the time, but we don't know for sure why that happens. Something I've heard a lot of smart-sounding supplement experts talk about is how all the supplement brands you can find today are at way too high of doses. It's true that most supplements are like 3 to 5 milligrams. Occasionally you can find a 1 milligram or a 10 milligram. There are people in the world taking 50 to 100 milligrams a day. It's a little out there, but it happens. Usually as an experimental treatment for cancer or an autoimmune disease or something. But for normal people, they usually take what's available, like 3 to 5 milligrams. And those smart-sounding supplement people are all looking down their noses at those people for taking way too much, saying none of us should be taking more than 0.3 milligrams a day because that's what our body naturally produces. I'm all for lower doses and mimicking what our youthful, healthy body did on its own. That's all great. But my pharmacist brain is like, hang on, oh ye high and mighty supplement evangelists. What's the bioavailability of oral melatonin? So I looked it up. It's 15 to 20% for an oral capsule or tablet. That means that after your stomach acid and liver and everything do their work, if you take a 3 milligram tablet, you're probably receiving 0.45 to 0.6 milligrams of melatonin, which is still more than you need every day, but not 10 times more. I also don't think we need to receive 0.3 milligrams of bioavailable melatonin as we're not now producing zero. We'll get to that in a second. Sublingual tablets that dissolve into your tongue are about 30 to 40% bioavailable. That's twice as much. Most liquids are 40 to 60% bioavailable, and liposomal liquids are 80 to 95% bioavailable. Melatonin is also very absorbable through the skin and is approximately 60 to 80% bioavailable transdermally, depending on the formulation. So, a 3 milligram swallowed capsule or tablet is about the same as a 1.5 milligram sublingual tablet, a 0.9 milligram liquid, a 0.5 milligram liposomal liquid or a 0.6 milligrams applied to your skin. Whew. Hopefully that's empowering to you and not confusing. The way you absorb your melatonin matters. Oral melatonin is also mostly metabolized by a liver enzyme called cytochrome P450-1A2, which only matters to you because there are genetic variants that differ from person to person about who is a slow or fast metabolizer of cytochrome P450-1A2. And the fun thing there is that it's the same enzyme that metabolizes caffeine. So if you know you're a fast caffeine metabolizer, you're likely a fast melatonin metabolizer. And if you know you're a slow caffeine metabolizer, you're likely a slow melatonin metabolizer. And you can use that to your advantage when you optimize when you want to take your melatonin dose. Fast metabolizers usually need a little bit of a higher dose and they want to take it as late as possible. Slow metabolizers can get away with a bit of a smaller dose and might want to take it up to a few hours before they go to bed, especially if they feel groggy when they wake up. Most people, though, are average metabolizers. In average metabolizers, levels of swallowed oral melatonin typically peak in 1 hour and have a mean plasma half-life of 33 to 45 minutes. So it'll be mostly gone from your system in 3 to 4 hours. Sublingual and liquid doses will be even faster. Why am I boring you with all this biochemistry talk? Mostly because I enjoy it and it makes me happy to talk about. Like my 16-year-old son who talks about bits per second or pixel refresh rate or whatever it is that makes him happy. But also because I think you can get way more benefit from melatonin by optimizing how you take it to match your needs. And know that some drugs and other supplements can interfere with the metabolism of melatonin, the main one being caffeine. If you have trouble falling asleep, you want a fast-acting formula like a liquid or a sublingual form. If you're not swallowing it, you don't have to worry about whether you're a fast or slow metabolizer. If you really just want to take a pill, you'll want to take it 45 or so minutes before bed. If you want general sleep support, you can do a capsule or tablet or liquid. If you're swallowing it and you're a fast metabolizer, you'll want to take it as late as possible. If you're swallowing it and you're a slow metabolizer, you'll want to play around with when you take it based on how groggy you feel in the morning. You might end up taking it 3 or 4 hours before you go to bed. If you're an average metabolizer, 30 to 60 minutes before bed is probably about right if you also have trouble falling asleep as part of your general sleep issues. But if, like me, you have no trouble falling asleep, but you often wake up at 3 a.m., then you want to take a different approach because sublingual and liquid doses will probably peak within 30 minutes and oral capsules and tablets in about 60 minutes. I want my dose to peak at 2:30 a.m., both to keep me asleep and to suppress my core body temperature. So what's a girl to do here? There are some extended release tablets and capsules that I think are perfect for a situation like mine. My only gripe is that most of them are 3 milligrams, and I'd rather that they be a lower dose, but we'll get to calculating your best dose in a minute. That's a great option. Another prolonged release option is to apply your melatonin topically to your skin. There are some melatonin patches lurking around the internet, but most of them have a bunch of other crap in them and have 7 or more milligrams of melatonin, which I'm not a fan of. And one of them says it lasts for 12 hours. Why would you want that? There are also topical liquids and creams that you can use for a prolonged effect. I've been trying a topical melatonin lately, and I think it is helping. It's in MCT oil, and it makes my skin feel very moisturized, which I like. Natural, healthy melatonin production from your pineal gland is slow and steady, building up to a peak release around 2 to 4 o'clock a.m. and then tapering off. It's not a bolus dose like you get with a liquid or a pill. In my mind, that's what we want to aim for. But I'm also coming at this from my own bias of having no trouble falling asleep, just trouble staying asleep at 3 o'clock a.m. So if you can stay asleep like a champ and just have trouble falling asleep, you'll want to take a different approach, even though that's not what your body naturally does. Have you read and or watched Project Hail Mary? Of course you have. What I really want is a nanny bot to give me slowly escalating doses throughout the night. Or what does he call the nanny bot in the movie? I can't remember. Maybe I could have a bot that has some kind of sensor in me and will keep all of my hormones and neurotransmitters at optimal levels for deep sleep and body repair. Ooh, Armando. That's what he calls it. And it doesn't shave him and cut his hair in the movie for some reason like it does in the book. Anyway, while I wait for my Armando to get manufactured, what I've been experimenting with is occasional use of my sustained release tablets, which work great most of the time, and nightly use of a small dose of topical melatonin liquid. And I also got a sublingual melatonin liquid that I keep on my nightstand in case I do wake up at 3 a.m. and I can take a small dose sublingually then. I've also heard that if you want your regular oral melatonin capsule to last a little longer, you can take it with some fat, like your fish oil capsule or a little bit of almond butter or something, and that will slow down its absorption. Or you can get a sustained release form. I was just poking around the internet and found that the company that makes my 3 milligram 6-hour sustained release melatonin that I like makes a 0.75 milligram 6-hour sustained release tablet. Amazing. They also make a 0.3 milligram 6-hour sustained release. How did I miss this before? Okay, so this leads perfectly into deciding your optimal dose. But before we do that, let's talk about something super important. The main way to suppress your melatonin production is with light. You also make a little less melatonin when you're standing up than lying down, and a little more lying down than standing up, and a little less as you get older. But far and away, it's about light. Mostly, but not quite 100%, light that hits your eyes. Living in darkness or only by firelight or candlelight after the sun goes down will make a really big difference in your natural melatonin production and ability to sleep well. If you can commit to living that way, then I greatly admire you. If you can't, then wearing a pair of well-made, lab-tested blue and green light blocking glasses and or only having red light bulbs after the sun goes down is almost as good. I've had my glasses for maybe, 12 years or so. I'm not sure. Sometimes I'm better at remembering to wear them than others, but they absolutely do make a difference. And I'm not even that meticulous about wearing them. I usually go to bed around 10:15 and I put my glasses on around 9 o'clock at night. And I for sure notice a difference in my sleep quality when I do. So if you haven't tried controlling your light yet, I would say try that before worrying about what brand or type of melatonin to go buy. Good quality glasses are expensive, but if you keep them in a protective case, they will last for decades, which will end up being cheaper in the long run. I also use mine to reduce jet lag, and they really work. Send me a message at healthcoachcollective@gmail.com if you want more info about how to set up a protocol for that. As far as glasses go, True Dark is a great brand. They're like $120 to $150. I know they're lab tested to see exactly which spectrum of light they block. It took me a long time of racking my brain to remember what brand mine are because I threw away their box after a few years and now I keep them in this cute little embroidered cherry blossom case. But I finally remembered they're a brand called Blue Blocks with an X. I Googled them to give you a price estimate and all I could find was used ones. But it looks like that company has been rebranded to be named Bon Charge. They sell all kinds of stuff now like, do I need a red light on my toothbrush? And their website's a little hard to navigate, but I think the glasses are around $130. There are plenty of cheaper options too. You just want to make sure that they know exactly what wavelengths of light they're blocking and why. Also remember that caffeine messes up your sleep and will directly interfere with melatonin metabolism. Okay, so now back to dosing. If you're traveling or are sick and it's disrupting your sleep, I think it's perfectly fine to take 3 or 5 milligrams orally temporarily, which is around 0.45 to 0.75 milligrams that will be absorbed. Or to take 2 milligrams sublingually or 1 milligram topically. But my opinion, based on what we've learned today, is that for everyday use, you probably want to use melatonin to try to close the gap between what you typically naturally produce in your 20s and 30s and what you're manufacturing today, just to mimic young biology as much as possible. I know you're not boring or average, so that could be almost anything, but using average women as a guide, that's probably about 41% less than 0.3 milligrams. Which is 0.12 milligrams, that we're most likely missing out on by being women over age 40. That would mean an oral capsule or tablet of 0.82 milligrams, a sublingual tablet or liquid of 0.4 milligrams, or 0.17 milligrams applied topically, at whatever time works best for your needs. And then 35% more than that once you're 60 years old, or, gradually get up to 35% more than that over time. And remember that melatonin does way more than just make you sleepy. It's one of the most potent antioxidants and free radical scavengers that we have. It helps lower your core body temperature at night. We don't know yet all of its roles in our gut and our eyes, and we're only just beginning to understand its interactions with our sex hormones. I think it's worth making up for lost levels as we get older rather than just taking it as a sleeping pill. And doing so judiciously won't interfere with what your body is producing on its own, which is a good thing to know. So I hope this was helpful to you. It's pretty different from the generic advice that I see all over the place, so I hope it gives you a good framework to run your options through and think about what the best fit is for your unique situation. What's my goal with taking melatonin? I propose it's to provide your body with the same amount of melatonin your pineal gland produced every night when you were like 28 years old. What dose will serve me best? I propose approximately 0.8 milligrams orally or 0.4 milligrams sublingually or 0.2 milligrams topically for daily use, just to make up for what you're missing. What dosage will give me the highest concentrations at the time I'm aiming for? That depends on whether your problem is falling asleep or staying asleep. And what is unique to my circumstances? That could be whether you're a slow or fast metabolizer, or if there's anything else disrupting your sleep, like travel or illness or high core body temperature at night. There's a ton more we could talk about, but I think that's enough for today. I heard one evangelist for a certain melatonin brand say hers was the only bioidentical melatonin, which is not true. Plain old melatonin that you can get anywhere is bioidentical. There may be some other advantages to her brand. It's called Herbatonin. They did do some head-to-head trials compared to synthetic melatonin, and it did better, so maybe, but that's not one of them. Also, there are some kind of cool skin effects of applying melatonin topically, since it's such a potent antioxidant and free radical scavenger. So if prolonged release throughout the night is your goal, getting a cosmetically elegant formula and using it topically on skin you want to look younger is a kind of a fun option. It's fabulous at protecting your skin from UV damage, but you're not going to be getting UV exposure when you're trying to go to sleep at night. So too bad about that. Thank you so much for being here and learning about how melatonin can help you in your 40s and 50s and beyond. Next week, we're going to talk about capping your potential. Let's not do that. Until then, use melatonin judiciously and don't be normal. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me today. If you found something valuable in today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a forward-thinking friend and subscribe to future episodes. Let's work together to make strong women who get elite-level care and results the rule rather than the exception. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events caused by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.